Hey, also another war video here. We are facing NY718, New York Guardians. We fought them many times in the past, and although I know they're not pushing war as heavily as they once did, it's a storied alliance with a very developed defense, and we have a bit of a history of choking to them. So I was trying to avoid that. I also, despite the fact that this is a pretty good matchup, if it goes wrong very quickly. I have a friend who died to Hitmonkey with Apocalypse rather recently, and that was on the back of my mind here. So you'll notice I'm playing very cautiously. Um, I am doing combos past the parry stun, but only far enough to trigger the evade, and then I'm backing off immediately, expecting it. I'm throwing heavies to refresh the debuffs, but only once the chance to evade is gone, because otherwise he can evade out of that. That said, it is still Apocalypse with class advantage and the Fury provided by the Ebb and Flow node, and he completely turns off Hitmonkey's ability to shrug anything, so this is not a very dangerous fight as long as I'm being that careful and I have the L1 evade. So there he evades again, but I know that that's going to be the last one he gets, because now I can parry and throw the special, and it's over. Pretty straightforward fight. I just try to never assume I've beaten Hitmonkey until he's actually down. Then we have Ebony Maw. I was expecting this fight to be unpleasant. Maw is just really annoying with this current global, honestly. Because out of all the champions out there, he's one of the ones that you're most likely to end up blocking a lot of times. And the heavy hitter node means that if he doesn't play nice and throw lights into your block that you can reparry, then this starts to get more difficult. You can also, of course, counter his medium right there, but you can't turn off focus that way, which even though you don't need to with Torch, I like to, because if this fight went really long, he does gain some benefits from getting that Black Tongue passive by getting to 100. So if I can knock him down, I still prefer to. So there you saw that we took more damage than from pretty much all the block hits before from taking those two blocked hits with the altitude up. Now, I could have probably backed out of that and not blocked right there and avoided the damage, but if I did, he probably would have thrown his L1, and that would have nullified the Fury that he put on me, and then that would have caused degen. And while I think that there's an excellent chance that I'm not getting through this fight without triggering that degen, if I can avoid it, I would prefer it. So now he's got 2 bars of power. Yeah, we're just going to block it. It is absolutely possible to fully evade his L2, but if you mess it up, then you get that same degen that I was just talking about avoiding. And just, why bother, right? Even with high ground, block it, the fight's over pretty quickly. We took our openings, we knew that we were going to be using potions after that one. So I've taken this Sasquatch dozens of times now, but this time I knew I had to save my pre-fight for the Mojo boss that I was assigned at the end of this war. And I have said before, the only time I've died to this particular fight was when I did not have my pre-fight, so already that made me a little bit nervous. But I was boosted up. You saw me put an invulnerability on. That was less for this than for the nodes that came after it, but you know, it worked for all of them. Again, I'm glad to have those great boosts predictably in the store. So we've gotten through the first cycle. He's going down pretty easily. But I notice that I get the feeling that this is going to be one of the fights where he goes into Wrath of Tanarak early. And there it is. Timer's about around. Not ideal. Now, I didn't actually think that this would kill him. Luckily, it did. However, the reason I threw that is because I knew that he had enough incinerates on him and the L3 would do enough damage that even if I came out of that animation and immediately threw an L1 into his block, even if I was somehow close enough that he would be able to retaliate against me, I figured through that whole process and having the invulnerability boost, I would have bought enough time for the incinerates to have finished him off. And I'm pretty sure that that would have been true, but the L3 ended up killing him, so no harm, no foul. Stryfe here, I originally was planning on using Torch for this node, because he is an amazing counter for Stryfe. He can't miss, so he bypasses Stryfe's invisibility, and Stryfe does energy damage, so Torch just builds a ton of smolders against him. However, like I said, I still had the Mojo boss at the end of this, and I have a mini that I'm supposed to take as well. And so I dueled a couple times to make sure it worked, and decided to take this with Apocalypse, because I knew it would take him up to 4 genetic code, and I just figured there was no way he didn't do enough damage to get this down pretty efficiently. Now notice there we hit into his block, but only once. Because even though Apocalypse is stun immune while attacking, and we would have been okay with the window of opportunity node trying to reflect the stun, we don't want to hit him while he is stunned because of the one-eye open node. We are also being careful once he gets to, I believe it's 5 telepathic charges, maybe it's 4. I think I was just being careful at 4 because I couldn't remember. But as soon as he gets there, he has the option of glancing, and then he can trigger his invisibility, and so we were just being careful. Now, I really have no idea what I did with that L1 evade. I think that was just a total brain fart. I mean, you can see it. I just kind of went spastic there. Maybe I confused his L1 for his heavy or something. I don't know. So that shock obviously did a fair amount of damage, and that was not ideal. We're going to heal him back up, even though I don't think it's necessary for this next fight. But like I said, we have a history of joking against these guys, and I do not want it to be me. Still, Apocalypse against almost any mutant is going to work out at least decently. Especially boosted. The dude's just a tank. So you see Mole Man's doing a fair amount of block damage, but that's not really a big deal, because once we get our specials off, he's just going to melt. Now, Mole Man can be stunned here because it's only... it's not one eye open, it's empowered immunity, and he's not actually immune to any of the things that I'm going to be doing. However, there's something up with, I guess it's the evade counter, but for some reason, both on the previous fight you saw and on this one, the timer for the window of opportunity disappeared, and I was not really willing to assume that it was actually gone, so I just don't stun him again for the rest of this fight. I built to the L2 first because I figured that I would be able to get to the L1 more easily and get off that special with all 4 debuffs up, do a ton of damage, and you can see we get him down before he ever goes into Frenzy and without taking much block damage at all. I'm not really sure what the idea is with Mole Man here, because unlike some of the other ones that can be put here, yeah, you can't hit into his block, but both of his specials are easily evadable and his heavy is very counterable. Oh well. So then on to Professor X. This is not a very dangerous node as long as you have the evade down and you have a proper counter. Professor X absolutely can catch people with the falter, but he also does energy damage, so it's kind of hard to mess it up with Torch, honestly, because you can ignore the falter as long as you block hits periodically to keep your temperature up. Now, he does benefit from the high ground, and so I waited at 9 hits there for a minute, and then intercepted him with the special to avoid blocking and taking any altitude damage. You don't need to do that. I easily could have just parried his medium. However, as I said, I knew that I had the boss after this, and while I was resolved not to do anything stupid to avoid block damage, I also wanted to minimize it if possible. So notice here I'm holding on to the L2. I think I hold it until the altitude comes back around for that reason. Maybe not. Okay, so yeah, that was a little bit earlier than was ideal. However, it did let me get back around to the L1 and we still remove the altitude. So you do have to play around Hurt Locker. He is going to have an awful lot of unblockable specials, but it's not a very difficult special. You know, you can duel for it before you take it, but that's really all there is to that one. Healed him back up, even though that's not the next fight. I will say for the Sorcerer Supreme, I think Reed is a great counter for her in general, because his Petrify and Suppression cut down on both of her methods of gaining power. However, we did originally assign magic for this node, and I do think that she is the better bet by a good margin in terms of just overall safety. However, this war did finish up on July 4th, and we had been told ahead of time the guy we assigned magic might have some availability issues, and so it was kind of on the back of my mind that I might have to take this. I have done this in off-season, but I don't think I had taken this node in season yet. So the idea is power start, kind of like with magic, because what we're doing here is we're getting to our L2, because now we are reducing all of her power gain by 80%. The problem is the node itself is boosting her power gain by 100%. And so you can see she's still getting a fair amount. So the biggest danger in this node is if she gets to that first L3, if she just insists on turtling. And that absolutely can happen, which is why I said magic is safer. However, now that we've gotten to our second L3 and we're reducing it by 120%, it's basically Sorcerer's normal power gain, but a little worse, and we've almost completely cut down on the power that she's gaining from actual landed hits. Additionally, as I've said before, I run the Petrify Mastery maxed, and so while she's stunned, she's only looking at half of her passive power gain because it's 200% minus 120 minus another 100 minus another 30. I'm not bothering with pushing to the L3 or anything like that. All I was going for here was keeping those debuffs up on her, in part because one of them is a taunt and keeps her aggressive and I don't want her turtling, and also because it's putting debuffs on her and keeping our attack value up. So now we have Mojo. To be honest, I have not taken this particular boss fight in a couple seasons, and I think the last time I attempted it, I may have died. So I was a little bit nervous going into this, but I did my duels. I don't fear Mojo anywhere that I can stun him, because I have said before that I think that the tactic that I use of whiffing a light attack after I throw a heavy is particularly effective in baiting specials against him and Dormammu. However, I don't feel comfortable countering his heavy with a heavy, and so I wasn't going to deal with that on this node. Now, notice there I accidentally triggered Dexterity, and then I waited out the anti-life field. I don't turn off Dex when fighting Mojo, because I figure that's actually more dangerous, because if he backs you up into the corner while you're baiting a special attack, you may have some trouble avoiding his heavies or his specials, and I prefer not to mess with that. I like to leave Dexterity on when I can, but that does mean that if you trigger it, you have to wait out his anti-life field so that it is safe to trigger it's safe to have the buff end when he has it down. But as long as you do that, not a big deal. So what I settled on as my strategy for this, in lieu of my normal whiff after a heavy, was a whiff after the L1. Now, I don't think the timing was always great here. Yeah, it worked in duels, but I was having some trouble in the actual fight. Notice there I triggered dexterity again, not because I was intending to per se, but because I knew that the alternative, continuing to hold block, would trigger his next prompt, and I figured it was better to trigger dexterity, let the prompt expire, take him back down to 1 million subscribers, and then just, end the buff safely. Point being, I was throwing my L1 rather than my L2 or saving to my L3 to build distance because my point in this fight was use my special and then keep myself open to try and bait his special so he comes at me. That's one of the older pieces of baiting advice that you'll hear from people, which is that if you want them to use their specials, it helps to use yours. So I was spamming the one I got most often, the L1, and it did seem to keep him pretty aggressive. I always try and block the first hit of his L1 and then dash out of all of those little leg hits. You can do that without triggering dex, and it makes the fight pretty safe. As for the war overall, I think we have broken our curse. We did not play perfectly. My BG ended up with an attack bonus of 163 overall, but we did end up winning the war, dying only 7 times total. And against a defense like this, we'll take that, right? So it looks like our season is starting to turn around. We'll just knock on wood real quick for that. But hopefully we can get back up into that tier 1 and secure master now that the rewards look that much prettier. Hope y'all's seasons are going well. Hope your holiday weekend went well, and I will catch y'all next time. Take care.